Hello students, welcome you to my class. Today we are going to learn about the poem Judas. Before that, let me share the screen with you. So I've titled my presentation as Analysis of Melvin Morris Judas. Before we get into the learning process, let me request you to approach the poem without any religious bias. Keep aside all your beliefs and approach this particular poem merely as a piece of literature and not judge it as a piece of religion or as something to do with religion. With this verse of disclaimer, let me get into my class. This particular poem has been presented to you as it comes in the syllabi. Okay, this particular poem, Judas, it comes on your way because it has been prescribed as one of the poems by the Manomaniyam University in the paper Commonwealth Literature. I'm sure that you have had an introduction about what a Commonwealth Literature is, but still, let me give a very brief introduction about what Commonwealth Literature is. Commonwealth Literature is a vague term, no longer in use. It denotes all writings that is written in English by the writer who belong to the British colonies. Wherever the British went and formed colonies, if people are writing from those colonies in English, those writings were categorized as Commonwealth literature. But now it has been replaced with the title New English Literature, and I would say that even that term is not very appropriate now because each nation has its own identity now. Colonization is over, and we are living in a post-colonial or in the post-modern world, and these terms, ideologies, and terminologies are no longer in significance. For example, all those literature that comes under this Commonwealth literature are now identified as a distinct form of literature like Caribbean literature, Indian literature, Chicano literature, like that. The names go by their own literature forms and not as Commonwealth literature. But still, critics argue that this literature can be called as new literature or a better way, post-colonial literature. And this poem, the particular poem, Judas, comes under Commonwealth literature because it is prescribed as one of the papers by the Manomaniyam Sundaranath University for the post-graduation students. Now let us get an introduction into the poet. Mervyn Eustace Morris is his name. He is a Jamaican poet from West Indies. He is born on 21st February 1937 in Kingston, Jamaica. He is a Rhodes Scholar. He is not only a poet but also a very good academician. He's a professor emeritus of creative writing and West Indian literature. And what is to be noted is he's the only Caribbean poet in all these 50 years who have won the title Poet Laureate. And it has been awarded and announced by the Minister of Tourism and Entertainment in the year 2014. On April 15, 2014, he has been honored with the title of Poet Laureate. And he's the only Poet Laureate from Jamaica. So we can understand the greatness of Morris as a poet. And why he got such an acclaim is because of his effort or because of his contribution in making his own native language. Native language is Creole. Creole is a native language of the people of Caribbean. And Creole is a form of English, but it has its own distinct dialects and language pattern. And Morris has contributed a lot in making this particular language across the world. So he's been honored with the title of the Poet Laureate for taking their language to the world scenario. He's been awarded. So this is about, in brief, about Melvin Morris. And now when we come to the poem Judas, it's a highly controversial poem and it deconstructs a popular belief of a biblical story, a biblical character, Judas. I hope you all are aware of Judas. Whenever you think about Judas, the image that comes to you is one who betrayed Jesus Christ, the Son of God. But here you find Judas being the speaker, and the poet approaches the poem from the perspective of Judas, a completely different perspective. And you would have seen this is a trend nowadays to deconstruct myth and approach characters from a very new perspective. Because no, I mean you can never say that everything has only one perspective. There are multiple perspectives, and this poet also approaches Judas from that another perspective. the perspective that is quite different from the conventional one. So here you find in the poem Judas, Judas himself is the speaker. So he presents the betrayal of Jesus Christ in a completely new light. You'll understand why Judas did that. And this is not a story, a biblical story. It can also be understood from a post-colonial perspective. What is that? We will come and get to know in the coming slides. So what I would like to tell you is Judas is no more a biblical character. You are going to look at him from a very, very unbiased view. He is going to present his own story through this poem, Judas. Now, let's see, to understand what the Judas of Morris is, we should know what the conventional Judas Iscariot was, or what the biblical Judas Iscariot was. He was one of the 12 original apostles of Jesus Christ. Hope you're all aware of it. And he is a controversial character because he is the one who led Jesus Christ for crucifixion. And the Christians can never forgive him for that. And he betrayed. How did he betray Jesus Christ? He betrayed him by kissing him. With a token of love, he betrayed Jesus Christ to the people who came to arrest him. And he also called him Rabbi. Rabbi is the term of a leader, a Jewish term that refers to a leader. So he identified Jesus Christ to be the leader of all the apostles by kissing him and calling him as a Rabbi. And he did that. It is said that he betrayed Jesus Christ for 30 pieces of silver. But later on, the story goes on like this. Later on, he is very regretful. He was very regretful, and he couldn't enjoy the money. So he returned the money to the priest and asked for their pardon, and he killed himself. That's how the story goes. And it is said that with that 30 pieces of silver, the priest bought a land which was called as the field of blood, because the blood of Christ has been sacrificed over the land. It is called the field of blood. And this particular deed of Judas is said to be the reason behind the Christians' anti-Semitism. So anti-Semitism is a hatred for the Jews. So Christians can never love Jews. That's what history also says. There is an antagonism or enmity going on between the Christians, or everyone looks at Jews with that kind of a negative impact. So he says that, and the biblical story says that this is the reason. This justifies the Christians' feeling of anti-Semitism towards the Jews. So this is about the biblical Judas, one who betrayed Christ for 30 pieces of silver by kissing him. Right? Now, we come to the analysis of the poem. And the setting should also be taken care of. This poem is set on the previous day of Christ's crucifixion, or this happened during the Last Supper. It happened in a Friday. The Last Supper on a Friday, we find the particular poem begins with. The poem begins on a Friday when the 12 apostles are seated along with Jesus Christ to have their final supper. This is where the poem begins. Now the text is not available online, hence I have provided you with the text. See, the first stanza itself is very, very, very powerful, and it shows the emotion of Judas very beautifully, very brilliantly. The author says, that evening, not so long ago, the master, fingers in the dish, said gently, did I not choose you 12? Yet one of you is a devil. So what happened? The 12 apostles are seated around him, and while he was about to eat his last supper, Jesus Christ said, I only chose every one of you. I individually chose every one of you, but still one of you had turned out to be a devil who is going to betray me. After saying this, he should have remained quiet, but he looked at the direction of Judas, and everyone followed the cue. See, mocking, he glanced at me, and others, quick on cue, looked my way too. So everyone, followed by Jesus Christ, everyone looked at the direction of Judas. You can imagine how Judas would be feeling. He is feeling very discriminated and marginalized and isolated among everyone. And Judas, and he adds on that we are all from Galilee. So we understand, and the critics also believe that Judas is the only one who is not from Galilee. Galilee is a place in modern history, right? And he's not believed to be one from that place, and he's isolated, and everyone are grouped together as they are from one particular place called Galilee, and immediately contempt rises in the mind of Judas, and he says, "Yes, I know your place, a nasty little province that smells of fish." He thinks this is given within parenthesis. Maybe this, I do not know. My interpretation is that this goes in the mind of Judas when people are proudly, when Jesus is proudly, saying that they are all from Galilee and they are all very good, but only Judas is the one who is going to betray him, and he is termed as a devil. And Judas thinks, you are all from Galilee, I know. That land that smells of fish. That shows a contempt that he has. He's supposed to hate these people because they give him only hatred. So this is the first stanza of the poem. Hope you understood. The first stanza tells you the background, the setting. It is set on a Friday evening when they are having supper together, and everyone is feeling one with the master except Judas, who had been identified by the master as a devil. Now we go to the second stanza, and Judas says that never ever Jesus had believed in it. Jesus never trusted me, and he is very jealous of his favorites. He says that Peter and Saint Peter and John are the favorites of Jesus Christ. And he says now they are also seated close to on both the sides. John and Peter have taken their seats, right? And he's wondering who will take the right hand. See, you are his favorite. Among the 12, John and Peter are said to be the favorites of Jesus Christ, and he's wondering who will take the right hand side. Why is this right hand side given importance? Because it is believed only people who win the admiration and respect of the people will be honored with the seat at the right hand. So it is believed that John takes the right hand. If I'm not wrong, Christians may know that better. It's usually, or during the Last Supper, it is John who takes the right hand side. It's a place of honor. So he's asking which Galilean Lord will sit at your right hand. He's asking to John and Peter. Among you, who will take? And we know it is John who takes the right hand side. So this adds to his jealousy and vengeance. He wants to vindicate his own anger. He has every right to get angry because he loved the master, but in spite of that, he gets only distrust and hatred in return. So he decides to betray the Christ. Tonight, I kissed him and I saw that mocking glance again. So he tries to put aside all his hatred, and when after the supper, they try to part with Jesus Christ. But what happens is once again, Jesus gives him the mocking look and says, "Betrayest thou the master with a kiss?" Now you're kissing to show your love, but you will be kissing me and betraying me. Won't you do that? He's asking in an ironic tone. And what adds to the fury of Judas is that after he pronounced these words of hatred, that you would betray me, you're going to betray me with a kiss, he looked very relieved as if he had done something great. He's so relieved to see Judas pine and suffer. That adds to his fury. See, that that knowing judge of man. He says, maybe he's right. So he decides, okay, you think that I am going to betray you. And it must be right. He concludes, okay, if you believe that, let me be the betrayer of you. You are the knowing judge of man. You are the one who created me, and you created me for this purpose. Right? That's the irony behind it. Actually, there should be a Judas to betray Jesus Christ. Only then the history can be made the way it is. Or Jesus can get his resurrection and be acclaimed as God or the Son of God. So Judas is an inevitable character, but in spite of that, he receives only hatred from the people as well as from the master. So he says, "It is you who have created me, and then you distressed me. How is this justifiable?" He asks. So he says, "The knowing judge of men, he surely ought to realize that truths are often complicated." What is the truth here? The truth is that Judas is highly inevitable, and he has to be there, and he has to be created that way. Only then the intention of the God and the Son of God can be fruitful. And this is a complicated truth. What he spotted, he created. This is a very, very poignant line in this poem, because what he spotted, he created. We all know the Christians believe that God created human being in his own replica. So he looked at himself and created human beings from the reflection of his own self. So in other words, this lines means that God wanted Judas to be the way he is right now. He willed it that way. He has to betray Jesus Christ, and it is his own willingness, and Judas has nothing to do with it. And why then are you looking at me with those foreign eyes? You look at me as an alien with those distrusting eyes. You wanted me to be this way, no? Then why are you looking at me with distrust and hatred? Is a question that he asked, Judas asked to, ask Jesus Christ. Hope you understood this stanza. He's telling in this stanza, Judas is expressing his agony over the distress that the master is showing towards him. He says, right from the beginning, when I joined you as an apostle, you've been showing me this distress and disinterest. But you created me in your own reflection. By your own reflection only you created me. You wanted me to betray you. Then why are you showing this to me? Why are you marginalizing me? Why are you isolating me? Because you want me this way. This is something that he is not able to digest, he is not able to tolerate, and he expresses that in this stanza. So now he decides. The next stanza tells you that he has decided to betray Jesus Christ for money, and we all think that it is for the 30 pieces of silver that he has betrayed Jesus Christ. Judas has betrayed Jesus Christ, but he says, he clears that point very beautifully by saying, the point is not the money. I did not betray Jesus Christ for the money. I would not sell the master, he is for free. Even if I am not offered this 30 pieces of silver, I would have definitely betrayed him. Why? Because of the treatment that he gives me. He gives always hated. So I am bound to return this as a punishment to him, this betrayal as a punishment to him. So even if nobody is there to give me 30 pieces of silver, I would definitely betray him. He is for free. I sell him for free. To preserve my purity of hate for him, I served and loved so well. Why do I do that? Because this is a punishment that I gave him because I loved him and I trusted him like all the other apostles. But what did you give me in return? Only hatred. And this is a punishment that I give you for betraying me so unjustly. You have so, what do you say, biased. So this is a punishment I give you. So even if I had been not offered with 30 silver coins, I would have definitely betrayed you. The stanza shows the anger and the frustration, the depression of Judas. He's been forced to do this kind, and we have to remember that is why he's been created. So this is the poem about. We have seen the summary of the poem. In the first stanza, we find Judas saying how the master is discriminating him from the beginning, telling that you are going to be a devil. The second stanza, he says, right from the beginning, he's been betrayed. Not betrayed, hated by the master. And he looks at him like a stranger and he says, it is for that he is betraying the master and not for the 30 pieces of silver. Thus the poem comes to an end. Now we have to think about why Judas feels this way. Because he is a marginalized disciple. I told you while narrating the summary of the poem itself that he is a marginalized disciple. When 12 are there, he is the only one who is being isolated by the master. When the master does that, everyone else also follows his footsteps and he feels very marginalized and discriminated. That is the reason why he betrayed. Then he's never trusted by Christ. When you love somebody, you naturally feel that you should be loved, but it was not given to him. And hatred for the favorites of Jesus. He has. You find when Jesus started to, when Jesus hated Judas, he had preferred John and Peter. Right? That created a kind of a vengeance in him, jealousy in Judas. And very boldly, Judas he criticizes Jesus Christ. Judas, and in other words, Melvin Morris, he has the courage to criticize the figure that is not very easy to do that. He is an accepted entity, a godly entity, and to raise your finger against that person requires a lot of courage, and Judas does that. And in the pretext of Judas, actually the poet is questioning this age-old and conventional belief that Judas is the symbolic or person who stands for betrayal. we have to also remember that Judas questions God's own creation. No, you created me in your own reflection. Then why are you accusing me? You are to be accused for every deed of yours. So what is the point in accusing me? So he challenges God's creation. And above all, you find throughout the poem the contempt of the speaker. Judas' contempt for people. You call yourself God, but you do not show the godliness or the generosity to love everyone alike. That is a criticism that he aims at God or the master. So this is a literal reading of the text. But when you look at Melvin Morris as a Jamaican poet and Jamaica under the British colonization, this text is another perspective, and it is can be read as a post-colonial text. And you can replace the master with Jesus Christ. And using this, Melvin Morris is trying to deconstruct the popular belief of popular Christian belief of Judas, and he's trying to question the justification of Christ in demeaning Judas as a character of betrayal. So the symbol that you find here is uh, are Jesus Christ and Judas. These are not merely characters; they acquire the status of symbols. Jesus Christ stands for colonizer who comes to the native land. You know, they come and occupy the different parts of the world without any invitation. They come on their own accord. After coming there, they look down upon the colonizers or the natives and condemn them as unrefined, uncultured, uncouth, like that. They condemn them and look at them with disgust and disbelief. So just like Judas, who represent the natives, they question who invited you over to our land. Then why, after coming here, why are you looking at us with distrust and hate? That is the point that Melvin Morris tries to make through this poem, Judas. Hope you understood. I repeat. Here we find two symbols. Jesus Christ can be looked upon as a symbol who represents the colonizer, and Judas can be looked upon as a symbol who represents the natives. So the master has selected Judas as one of his disciples on his own accord. It's like that. The colonizer came to West Indies on their own accord, and why do they hate the natives? Just like Jesus Christ hated and had no trust on Judas. The colonizer also did not like the natives, and they had no trust for the natives. So Judas takes the side of the natives and asking the colonizer, why the hell did you come to our land? And after coming, who invited you here? After coming, why do you hate our people and our land? So this is the crux of the poem, or this is the point that Morris is trying to present through the biblical story of Judas, or by deconstructing the belief of the biblical story and the character Judas. Now you find the tone of the poem to be highly sarcastic. Irony is the device that the poet uses to unveil the villainy of the master. And you could find anger running right throughout all the stanzas, and you can also find the helplessness and frustration being coming out of the words that has been very carefully chosen by the poet. So this is a very simple poem, and but it has its undercurrent of meaning, and it should be approached in that way. And I hope you understood the poem, and we will have discussion on the poem in the live class. In the Google Meet, we will meet and we will have a live discussion on this. Thank you for watching.